With Joey Blackwell, I'm Katie Windham, and this is Just a Minute. When Alabama basketball had their senior day last Saturday, there were three players that were honored: Noah Gurley, Adam Cottrell, and Don Welch. And one that wasn't was Jahvon Quinerly. NATO's explained that it was because he had been last year, and they've discussed whether or not he will come back for this upcoming season. And it'll probably be an off-season discussion. He's been in college for a while now, but he's had a bunch of ups and downs between transfers and injuries. So I'm sure it will be, a decision they make in the offseason. But Joey, what do you think? Should Jahvon Quinerly come back for another year for this Alabama basketball team?
It's a tough question, and it's one that I didn't expect to be, raised or at this point in the season. But considering how well he's playing, on top of him, on top of Oates talking about how they haven't really discussed it yet, but it's in the cards essentially. It's definitely an interesting question. Quinterly was a guy that, of course, was expected to go to the draft last year. Then he, of course, had the injury that probably would have hurt his draft stock had he decided to enter the draft. So having him already back this year is already a bonus for Alabama. But when you consider how that stock has probably slipped a little bit more, and it's not because of his lack of performance. I mean, it probably has a little bit to do with that compared to himself in years prior. It's more so of all the fantastic players on Alabama's roster that are around him, and they've obviously his first season at Alabama that he was playing, not that gap year basically where he was on the bench. But that first year, he was a bench player. Obviously, he won the SEC tournament MVP coming off the bench. But then last year, he took on a starter role and really, he was the glue that held the offense together. But even then, he also contributed to a lot of the turnover issues on, all the offensive end of the court. His defense was, I think, improved. This year, we've seen his defense kind of slip off a little bit. But over these past few weeks, it has gotten a lot better. So hopefully that'll continue on heading into March. So I think right now his draft stock is still lower than it was a couple of years ago had he entered the draft. I think that if he comes back for another year, you won't have as much star power on the roster. You won't have Brandon Miller. You probably won't have a guy like Noah Clowney. You'll still have players like Namari Burnett. Mark Sears will be gone. So he has that opportunity to
Sears will
really.
be back.
Oh, Sears will be back. Okay, sorry, my bad. Well, even with Sears back, you're having to compete with less on the roster, and you'll have more of a chance to shine. So I know I'm getting kind of long-winded here. I think it would benefit him to come back for another year. But I also thought J.D. Davison would benefit from coming back for another year too, and he went to the NBA. So we'll just have to wait and see what his ultimate decision is. I think it really is a 50-50 decision, or like trying to project whether he'll stay or go. Because a lot of times, like you said, this would be his 6th year in college, his 5th year playing college basketball. So you have to wonder if, money is an object. But then with the advent of NIL and the dawn of that, players can make money in college, and JQ has been one of the benefiters of that. So it's not as urgent. So I think he should stay. But that being said, I think there's still a huge possibility that he's hangs up his cleats or his shoes at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point the NBA is probably not in the picture for JQ. I think his draft stock was the highest after that season where he was the SEC tournament MVP, and then last year went down, and then he had the knee injury, and then just as he's getting older, it's not as realistic. So I think more of his options would be: is he going to go play somewhere overseas after this season, or come back for another year? And I think a lot of it is going to be kind of what, like you said, Alabama's roster has. I don't think the coaching staff is going to force JQ to leave. If he wants to come back, I think they'll let him, but I don't think they're necessarily going to beg. But there's going to be pros and cons to it. Like you said, he's obviously been a great leader for this team this year. He has, as we saw in Alabama's last game against Arkansas, when he's at his best, he opens up the offense for everyone because he can drive to the lane and score, or he can drive and kick and, bring the defenders in, which opens it up for other people. So he does bring good things on the court. He's brought good things off the court. He's a good leader, but it's more where will he fit into Alabama's roster next season? And like you said, with NIL, JQ, because of his Jelly Fam stuff from high school, has a ton of social media followers. So he can make a lot of money on NIL. And so it's really just going to depend on, and he also has, the younger brother that's a walk-on the team. So do they want to play together for one more year? There's a lot of factors in that. And I think he could be beneficial for Alabama, but it's also going to depend on, what Nate Oates brings in from the transfer portal. And if he adds any more people in next year's signing class to really where if there is a good scholarship spot for JQ. But as we're recording this and when it'll come out, tonight is Alabama's final home game of the season, which will be the last game for sure for Brandon Miller, maybe a couple other players, including JQ. So we'll just have to wait and see. But Alabama will be trying to wrap up the SEC tonight, and BamaCentral will have you covered with all of that. But that'll wrap up today's Just a Minute. Thank you so much for watching.